Hey guys, what's up? It's Finch here. Today we are going to be discussing the SSOU Viability rankings. They got updated actually a bit over a week ago. We got the rises, and yesterday evening we got the drops. I split it up a little bit because the Zamazenta Crown suspect test interrupted my ability to make progress in the project, and I wanted to get out the rises, which were a little more prominent, a little more noteworthy this time around before the drop. So that split up not only was good for me in my personal time management, but also I feel like gave people a bit of tempo before the suspect kind of put this thread on hold. For those of you that don't know, suspect tests are kind of roadblocks for viability ranking threads due to the fact that the metagame could be with the Pokemon that in the suspect or without it, and we don't want to jump to the conclusion before altering the rankings. So we will probably have another slate after these hours in the crown suspect one way or another, and stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we have a slate here that we want to go over. Just some housekeeping notes. We had larger shifts in viability this time. This was a pretty big shift overall, especially in terms of the rises, if only because of the fact that we're in a metagame state right now that not only changed quite a bit after the ban of Cinderace and the ban of Magnuson, not complex bans, but also it had been a while. So yeah. In addition to this, we experienced a bit of an unprecedented shift in the way we approach things. We had a lot of things shift multiple ranks, i.e. going from A- to A+ instead of just A- to A, or going from B+ to B- instead of just B+ to B. Things like that you'll see quite a bit, so stay tuned for that. And in addition to that, I like using bullet points, so you're going to enjoy a lot of bullet points if you're reading through the posts as I go through this. I'm not going to be reading through the posts myself. I'm just going to be paraphrasing the main points, going over the Pokemon. I'm not really going to spend more than a minute or two on any individual Pokemon. Some Pokemon might even see quite less, might just get a mention. So yeah, I don't think that everything, for example, I don't think that, I don't think Rotom Wash going from B to B+ deserves a huge mention, nor other things as well. But then some Pokemon, say Corbinite going from A to A+, which is what we're going to be starting off with, is pretty important. It shows a shift in the metagame. So that shift is that Corbinite saw more and more usage as it is more effective as a defogger right now than just about any other defog option. It is edging out Tornadus Therian, and it's quite a lot better than Mandibuzz right now. Of course, it's not going to fit on every single team, but when it can fit, it does great against things like Rillaboom, Landorus T, Garchomp, Cortana, Excadrill. This coupled with the fact that it has a decent set mix, the Iron Defense plus Body Per set is surging right now, doing great against physical attackers, even being able to check things like Weavile and Bisharp as well, depending on the situation. And not to mention it does well against Zamazenta Crown, but that's not in this hypothetical metagame we're discussing now, so we'll have to see until it gets unbanned or not. But anyway, that aside, it's also worth noting that Corviknight, it's a Pokemon that I say is good, and has always been good, but at certain times, when the tier is a bit more friendly to it, it becomes great, and that greatness is embodied by how many different sets it could run effectively. In some metagames, the defog set was really all it had going for it, but now we're seeing more of the bulk up sets, the Iron Defense plus Body Press set, and I think that exemplifies it having an expanded niche. It can fulfill a wider array of things. It can be a win condition on both your teams, while also shutting down things in certain PP-oriented scenarios with Substitute plus Roost plus Pressure. In addition to that, it can fulfill the standard defog pivot variant and role with the defog plus Body Press or Brave Bird plus Roost plus U-turn variant as well. And if you don't mind the lack of pivoting, you're okay with being a little more passive, you can run the Iron Defense set and be a hard wall to physical attackers. Combining all these roles makes it so that Corviknight is not only the best defogger, but also one of the best utility Pokemon in metagame, landing it a spot in A+ without a doubt in my eyes. Next up, another Pokemon rising from A to A+ is going to be Dragapol. Dragapult is a Pokemon that, while admittedly stuck in a tier full of Regenerator loops and Magic Guard spam and hazard setting and hazard removal, it cannot do any of these things, but despite that, it's still able to force its way through into a very strong spot due to its amazing typing of Ghost plus Dragon. In addition to this, it also is strong, fast, and has a very practical set of tools that go with it, letting it run both a utility set with sparing status and using Hex and using a pivot, or a spec set to break and also function as a pivot. Other variants such as Dragon Dance and even the Substitute variant, they are viable, but perhaps a little more fringe. Sorry, I don't know if my voice just changed complexion a little bit. I'm trying to position my microphone a little bit better to get my voice going, as I think the start might not have been great, but we're doing a one take Tuesday today. It's Tuesdays I'm recording this, and I got shit to do, so we're already into this video, so screw it. I'm sorry if things aren't sounding great, but regardless of that fact, Dragapult's ultimate rise is pretty clear. The choice spec set is really taking over the metagame, and it's only getting better with time. In addition to this, while there are some shortcomings such as the vulnerability to dark types it can muscle past these Pokemon if given the chance as well, making Dragapol a very special Pokemon in my eyes. Next up, we have Slowking. Slowking has really climbed back up to the top of the metagame, and it's arguably a top 10 Pokemon right now when it never has been one in OU ever before. Slowbro was perhaps the pick of the two earlier on in the DLC 2 metagame, but that is no longer the case. Nowadays, we're seeing more and more Slowking. It does great against things like Nidoking, Tornadus Therian. Even does better against Heatran, Tapu Lily, Dragapol, those type of Pokemon. While it doesn't necessarily counter them, it does well enough to where it is able to check them. While Slowbro, due to it being more physically defensive oriented, it does better against the Garchomps, the Landorus Teeth of the world, those type of Pokemon. It can even shrug off hit from Zero Order if needed, but against the special attackers, it can and will get overwhelmed. And the metagame arguably centered itself more around strong special attackers, as we saw with Dragapol just before, so that, coupled with the abundance of physical attackers that are grass and or dark type, make it so that Slowbro's niche isn't necessarily as practical, whereas Slowking's niche is rising up, and the room for Future Sight plus Teleport, Regenerator, Water type right now is huge. That is an amazing set of qualities to have, but Slowking seems to be the slightly better of the two in this metagame. In the Zama Center Crown metagame, I actually think it's vice versa, but that is not necessarily something that's going to stick forever. Needless to say, the metagame is going to be what it is, and we're going to see it continue to adapt, so I'm curious to see how that goes as well. Just want to make sure my background music is still going, right? Yeah, okay, hopefully you guys can hear it. I've been having some setting issues, computer issues today, so yeah, still breaking in a new laptop. But anyway, Cortana is next up. It rose from A- to A. I actually rated it to personally stay in A-, but I do understand why it rose up. The bans of Magearna and Cinderace both helped it quite a bit. Magearna was able to even stomach a +2 Life Orb attack, if not Smart Strike, which you never see on the Swords Dance set nowadays. And Cinderace was able to outrun and demolish it while tanking any one hit besides maybe a Choice Band boosted attack. I'm not too sure, but all in all, Cortana is a very good threatening Pokemon in metagame. Admittedly, it's a little all or nothing. It's going to struggle against teams with things like Zapdos and the Iron Defense Steel types and whatnot, but a +2 Life Orb boosted knockoff can even threaten those Pokemon. That, coupled with the fact that there are very few things that actually are counter it, make it quite effective. Of course, there are things that check it. It's very easy to revenge kill, and any special attacker is going to be able to muscle past it without much doubt at all. Even things like resisted Scalds from things like Slowbro and Slowking, which aren't particularly offensive, are going to do quite a bit to it. Not to mention risking the burn, but yeah, Cortana's niche is pretty straightforward. What it can do is it can break through things physically. It is a very strong attacker. While it looks like a paperclip, it is so much more. It is a brute force that is going to really be one to struggle against defensively, but it still has some shortcomings offensively and defensively that make it so that it's more of an A, or even in my opinion, A- Pokemon rather than A+ or S Pokemon. That, coupled with the fact that you want to use your Steel type something more defensive on a lot of teams right now, making it pretty limited in what it can use, but still, when you can find the right team for Cortana, it is quite effective. Next up, we have Tapu Lily, also making the rise from A- to A. This one I was a bit more on the fence about, but all in all, Tapu Lily is a very strong Pokemon. While it did lose out on Z moves, it did gain access to Heavy Duty Boots, which makes the Calm Mindset very threatening, and it helps increase its longevity. In addition to this, while terrain got a bit weaker, the Spec set is still punishing things left and right in this metagame. Very challenging to switch into. Maybe it has a little more reliance on Focus Blast to muscle past Steel types, because the Spec Psychic isn't going to do as much as something like a Heatran. Last generation catch doing 40%, but that's neither here nor there. Spec Tapu Lily is still booming in this metagame, expanding its way all the way towards forcing itself to be, oh wait, it doesn't get Expanding Force, but it's still good. That's the kicker. Everyone's like, if Tapu Lily gets Expanding Force, it's going to be broken. If it doesn't, it's going to be, but it's still good without that, and I'm loving that. That's a really fun little bit about it. Choice Specs, yeah, it increased greatly in Viability. With the ban of Cinderace and Magearna. Again, it's just another Pokemon reaction to those banned. Magearna was able to check it, Cinderace was able to outrun Revenge Kill it, and that combination was not great for it. It felt as if it was suppressed, and there were better offensive options, particularly Magearna as a fire type, and now it is. That's no longer the case. It's pretty good. Next up, we're seeing Zeraora. Zeraora is a Pokemon that was quite effective in the DLC 1 metagame, but it dropped to being a UU Pokemon. In fact, as this ranking was made, it was still a UU Pokemon by usage, I believe. Not sure where it is now, quite frankly, but it's a shocking revelation that clicking Knockoff against Leftovers Landers, Rocky Helmet Garchomp, suddenly can make it so that those Pokemon really lack any lifeline, ability to punish you, and survivability. That's huge. Zeraora is going to need to come in a couple times, but with boots and the right teammates, it can do so. And in addition to that, not many things really hard counter it due to this knockoff longevity reasons. Suddenly, Landorus T is only going to check it 2 or 3 times. Suddenly, Garchomp's only going to check it 1 or 2 times. Sure, there are things like Tangrowth in the metagame and Powdon, which absolutely can put a stop to it, but those Pokemon aside, Zeraora is a menace to society, and you have to absolutely be careful against the Heavy Duty Boot pivot set, or even though occasionally seeing bulk up variants as well. Next up, we have Dragonite. The Forgotten Dragon is back. in business. The combination of heavy duty boot and multi-scale is an absolute godsend for this thing. While utility sets have seen quite a bit of usage all the way through Cinderace's time in the tier, being a great check to it, the truth be told is that Dragon Dance on Dragonite is the classical set, and it is still effective in this metagame, having great levels of survivability with, again, the combination of boots and multi-scale. And also Dual Wing Beat is a godsend, a great stab option that pairs nicely with Earthquake against everything not named Corbinite or Skarmory. All in all, Dragonite's also a superb Volcarona check, and it does the job both offensively and defensively, checking some other Pokemon like Heatran as well, while also dealing out the damage with boosted Dual Wing Beats and potentially boosted Earthquakes. Moreover, it's a very strong Pokemon right now, and that raise to A- is unsurprising, and I wouldn't even mind seeing it in A rank. Next up, we have Malmetal, a Pokemon that voyaged all the way up to A+ at the start, but then back down all the way to B+. Now it's slowly starting to rise up. While the mono steel typing is a bit awkward, as there's so many other steel types that can kind of combine different typings and really hard check or counter things, Malmetal only has a steel typing, which gives it a lot of resistances, but also a lot of coverage moves are geared to seeing it super effectively. You see Focus Blast all the time, for example, on things like Tornadus T, Flamethrower, and Dragapol, so on and so forth. Options like these can really deter it, especially with timely knockoffs and crippling it, but at the same time, Malmetal has a wide array of good sets, be it Protective Pads, Choice Bands, Leftovers, even Assault Vest we see on occasion, makes it so that Malmetal is not only strong but very durable, and it can poke holes through many a team in this current metagame. I quite like Malmetal, and I think that on the right team, you can absolutely fit it. I would advise trying it out because I feel like it's a bit of an understood Pokemon, a Pokemon that's misunderstood, a Pokemon that we really should value higher in this metagame right now, and I absolutely voted it for A- because of that. Another Steel type rising up, and the second Pokemon in what is a string of 4 steel types is Scizor. Scizor's viability shot up as well. It rose up to A-, and this is largely, again, because of the bans, but this is more of an indirect reaction. While it's true, Cinderace being in the metagame did not help Scizor, it did not do any favors. What it actually meant was that Cinderace and Magnuson getting banned meant more Kyurem. More Kyurem means more Scizor, because Scizor's able to check even a Specs Kyurem, barring Specs Focus Blast, which is pretty impressive. The increased special bulk with enough investment makes it so that it can tank Specs Ice Beam, Specs Freeze Dry, and even 2 Specs Draco Meteors, assuming it's holding heavy duty boots, or with Leftovers coming into play with Roxas, I believe. This, coupled with the fact that it has nice offensive utility already with Priority, Bullet Punch, with based off of Stab and Technician, or the fact that it gets access to things like Swords Dance to boost attack, Knockoff to cripple things, U-turn to generate momentum, and so on and so forth. Scizor is an underrated Pokemon. Skarmory, I'll get to in my next post. I forgot it initially, so I'm just going to go with the flow there. Magnuson, another Steel-type Pokemon. It's actually effective at trapping other Steel types, though. Scizor, Skarmory, Corbinite, you name it, Magnuson's going to be able to trap them. In addition, Battlethorn with the Iron Defense plus Body Press set, which is surging in usage once more, quite effective in that. I think that the Surge in Magnezone was a good part of the metagame right now, deterring certain things. Admittedly, Magnapol is kind of a crazy ability in that it's the one trapping ability we have left. Even Pursuit is banned, the trapping move, so it's pretty crazy, but it's effective in the metagame without a doubt. Trapping in general is, so it definitely belongs to get the nod to A- for the time being. Volcarona and Weavile and Urshifu Rapid also rose up to A- as for Volcarona. It's a potent Quiver Dance Sweeper on the special end spectrum, running a wide array of sets, also benefiting from the surgence of Flame Body rather than Flash Fire Heatran, which means it's hit neutrally by Flamethrower, making it much less effective as a checker counter to Volcarona. As for Weavile, it and Bishop, which we'll get to later, also rose up the ranks. It is a potent Dark type attacker, be it with Heavy Duty Boots and Swords Dance, or potentially even Wide Lens and Swords Dance to make use of Triple Axle, or with the Choice Band. Weavile is a very strong Pokemon with a great dual stab, amazing speed tier, and a lot of practical options in terms of the coverage department, making it effective in the metagame and something that's very hard to keep in check without a specific pool of Pokemon. However, one of those Pokemon is Urshifu Rapid, which is able to check Dark types like Weavile, like Bisharp, while also dealing out great deals of damage, especially when paired with Future Sight support, such as Slowking. The combination of Surging Strikes in close combat with Future Sight makes it so that really only things like Slowbro can check it, which is not going to love taking U-turn for 45 to 50% as well from Choice Band's variants. But things like Rocky Helmet Tangrowth, things like Toxapex, which normally would be great checks to Urshifu Rapid, at very least scouting out the move it locks into, suddenly are not going to be able to switch into all with Future Sight potentially looming above head, making it so that Urshifu Rapid is not only good on rain teams, but also some balance teams as well, as it also has the practical ability to check things like Dark types and even potentially Heatran. Overall, Urshifu Rapid is a very strong Pokemon. Next up, we have Rotom Wash, rising from B to B+. The washing machine is putting the metagame through the spin cycle once more. It's great at deterring the usage of Tornadus T and even Landorus T, while it is a bit unreliable due to reliance on Hydro Pump against and Will-O-Wisp, two inaccurate moves against physical attackers and or ground types. A Volt Switch spam coupled with accurate status moves when they hit can go a long way to crippling teams, potentially even healing up against them with Pain Split and weakening them, and also just being a really effective pivot that's annoying to keep in check. 1 second, guys, I just gotta pause for a brief second here. Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry about that, guys. Just had to change angles again, and also my computer get charging. Actually at pretty low percentage right now, so that's not great. But anyway, that aside, Buzzwole, Rambo, the GOAT next up. A great check to grass types like Rillaboom and Cortana, but also doing well against grounds like Landorus T, Garchomp, and Excadrill, and darks like Weavile and Bisharp. Overall, it's a great catch-em-all, physically defensive stop, but also it could run physically offensive sets. Doesn't even need to maximize physical bulk, and it can still hit pretty hard. Buzzwole is a pretty impressive Pokemon metagame. Of course, it's always going to be walled by one of things like Toxapex, Clefable, so Zapdos. It's not going to love that, but if you find the right support for it, you get on the right team, it can pay dividends, and overall, it's definitely seeing a little bit of a mini resurgence after falling way off after being a top 10 Pokemon initially. Then we have some fringe Pokemon getting their way up from the C ranks to the low B ranks and B-. Blacephalon, which is a strong special attacker with Calm Mind or Choice Specs, and Primarina, which largely is a substitute plus Calm Mind set that's pretty pesky, but oftentimes outclassed by Calm Mind, Tapu Lily, and other stronger special attackers. So you got to pick your spots with Primarina there. I think it's good enough to be in the B ranks, maybe even B itself instead of B-, but beyond that, it's more of a matchup fish than it is anything else. It's definitely a fish out of water in standard circles, if you will. Next up, 2 ice types finding their way up from the lowest stage of viability all the way from C- to C, which is a little bit of improvement. Arctozolt and Cloyster. Arctozolt is great on hail teams with Ninetales Alola more often than not. Flush Rush is a great ability, and it also has some pretty devastating moves coupled with the Bolt Beam stab, which is quite impressive. And Cloyster is a shell smashing pain in the you-know-what, especially when paired with Skill, Link, and King's Rock, an item that should be banned from competitive Pokemon. Now, there are some other Pokemon that rose as well that I forgot before, so let's get into them now. Skarmory rose due to the prominence of the Iron Defense plus Body Press set, which is a great spiker, great check the number of Pokemon, especially physically oriented hyper-offensive teams. But again, Dragonite, Rillaboom, Cortana, etc. These Pokemon are Pokemon that you really want to deter, and you're able to do so quite nicely. So yeah, I gotta pause again, damn it. 1 second. Okay, one mad dash later, I actually got the wrong computer charger, and I didn't notice it because my last computer charger is identical. It's a long story, but my computer is now actually charging. I'm so sorry. Oh boy, that was super unprofessional. It's been a long day because like normally I record late at night after like sports are on and I chill, but tonight I can't really do that as much. I got another thing planned, so I'm trying to do it before the Yankee game starts in 20-25 minutes. So it's just been one thing after another. I had work, then I had dinner, now I'm recording, so I'm sorry. Not very organized. My bad there. Totally my fault. Anyway, yeah, Skarmory, it's a great physical wall with potentially even like outright sweeping hyper offensive teams they lack, like Volcarona or Specs Dragapol or something along those lines, and it's pretty good. Yeah. Whew. 1 second. Next up, Bisharp. Much like Weavile, Bisharp is just a strong, physically offensive dark type. The Choice Band set saw an uptick in usage, and the Swords Dance set is potent as always. It's no surprise that Pokemon with Defiant, deterring Defog, and such high attack with Dark being one of its primary coverage, and Iron Head to also abuse Fairy types which resist Dark, being really good in the metagame right now. So yeah, Magearna being gone also means one less Steel type and one less Pokemon can live +2 hit from it, which is pretty cool. Now let's talk about the drip, the drop, all the Pokemon that got a little bit worse in the metagame. First off, Zapdos, Pokemon that I actually believe should have stayed in A. The general idea is that other defoggers like Corbinite saw a bit more usage, coupled with the fact that knockoff spam was at an all-time high, making it so that Zapdos was a bit less effective in the current metagame. It also doesn't do well against stealth rockers like Heatran, Garchomp, Tyranitar, and Clefable, which definitely hold it back a little bit in terms of overall viability. Next up, we have Slowbro. Much like we saw Slowking rise all the way up from A- to A+, or A to A+, Slowbro rose initially all the way up to A+, but then it fell down to A, and now it's all the way back down to B+. While in the Zombies Hunt the Crown metagame, I think would be closer back to being A. In this metagame, not so much. Due to the abundance of Heatran, Nidoking, Tornadus T, we see Slowking more and more, especially with a lot of physical attackers turning towards dark types, and even potentially grass types that are going to hit Slowbro hard no matter how physically bulky it is. This makes it very challenging for it to see sustained usage in this metagame, but that can and absolutely will change, so we'll have to keep our eyes on that. Next off, Blissey. Blissey is a Pokemon. Like, I actually voted for this to be A- again, just being completely honest, but I'm not the only person voting. We actually have a 9-person VR council, a great group of guys. But yeah, Blissey, I really like teleport sets. I think they're pretty good, but admittedly, they are pretty predictable. Passive things like physical attackers, Bisharp, Rillaboom, Cortana can absolutely take advantage of them, and Zombies Counter metagame isn't any more friendly to it either. Taunt, in addition to things like Taunt and Trick, which are very common in the metagame right now, can also deter and minimize it, and make it so that there are sequences that can really abuse it coming in each time, making it so that it's more of a liability than effective countermeasure in those games. And that we're seeing Blissey a lot, I completely understand, and that's why it dropped. So yeah, Excadrill and Tyranitar also dropping. Sand has just not been as great as it has been in prior generations. This generation, it still is pretty viable. We've seen it a couple times in tournaments for sure, but sorry, excuse me. But it definitely isn't at its peak. Excadrill in particular faces strong competition from an abundance of other steel types, whereas Tyranitar, it is following in the shadow of the other offensive dark types, whereas defensively, with the rise of especially defensive Fable, especially defensive Heatran, and even Mandible is retaining some viability as a Dragapol check, it just isn't great given how susceptible it is to status and reliant it is on arrest in those situations. Even against things like Toxic Heatran, it stands to rest pretty promptly. A sandwich between those two, another Pokemon dropping from A- to B+ is going to be Slow King Galar. While Slow King Galar was one of the gems of early SSOU in the DLC 2 metagame, being a surprise Pokemon, making it in a tier by usage, it fell off a little bit here. With Pheromosa being gone and now Magearna being gone, there's a bit less of a reason to use the Assault Vest set. It just checks a lot less Pokemon. It still does well against Fairy types like Tapu Koko and Clefable, but they're fewer and far between, and things like Tapu Lily can run Side Shock. We're also seeing an abundance of Trick Clefable, a lot of knockoff users, again, a lot of things that deter it, coupled with the fact that virtually every single physical attacker can and will give it a lot of trouble. Next up, we have Latios. The Latios fell all the way down in UU by usage. My goodness, a Pokemon that used to be the face of Ubers in its debut generation has fallen so far down. Latios, all things considered, is still a good Pokemon, but it definitely isn't great. And I think in OU, it is very minimal usage of it, if you will. You can find that. Dropping Dracos is hard in a tier filled with Fairy types and even a lot of Steel types, as we said before. The metagame is highly saturated with checks and or counters to it, whereas it doesn't provide much defensively, making it very hard to justify using Latios in this metagame. Amoonguss, it's hard because we see other Pokemon that are grass or poison type that have the ability Regenerator in this metagame that largely outclass it as defensive and even pivoting options. Amoonguss is struggling to find its way onto teams that can check things like Rillaboom, and it does well against Fairy types, but that combination is not really surprising, a shocking one. Other things can do that, other cores can do that, and all in all, Amoonguss is pretty passive and reliant on status, making it minimally effective in this metagame. Next up, we have Como, the Jack of all trades, master of none. While its versatility, its set mix is cool, running everything from the +1 attack and every single stat set, that cheesy offensive set that is, to belly drum sets, to bulky stealth rock sets and sword stand sets. There's nothing that it really particularly excels at in this metagame, making so that Como is middling at best. Moltres and Moltres Galar also falling from B to B-. It's unfortunate that the bird is not necessarily the word here. While Substitute plus Roost Moltres with pressure, I actually saw an uptick in usage recently, being able to spread some damage on the special end while also walling things and potentially even PP stalling them out. It wasn't seen as a consistent measure in this metagame, especially given how common things like Toxapex and those type of switching cores were, or the fact that Heatran and Tyranitar still saw decent usage as well. So yeah. Although Heatran can actually lose to the Subroot set, you got to keep that in mind, but it really depends on specifics. All in all, though, it wasn't a super convenient Pokemon to make use of. Didn't really check or counter a ton of things either. And it was very reliant on heavy-duty boots, which, again, knock off heavy metagame. Moltres Galar just never really found its own. It really misses having recovery, it's reliant on boots, and it only fits on really offensive teams, likely Hyper Offense as essential win condition, and those teams really don't love when they miss Hurricane, so Moltres Galar kind of finds itself as the odd bird out in this metagame, unfortunately, for the time being. Next up, another Dark type, Zarude, falling from B to B-. The metagame just isn't very friendly to it. A lot of flying types are able to deter it. This, coupled with the fact that other dark types are better offensively, more potent and threatening, make it so that Zarude is really the odd Pokemon out for the time being. Moving forward, Regieleki is bad. Kingdra is only really seen on rain teams, and even there, it isn't particularly common anymore with the uptick in Barraskewda and Seismitoad usage. Hatterene has seen better days. It was really good in DLC 1 or regular metagames, but now in the DLC 2 metagame, it's definitely seen better days. While the bans of Cinderace and Magearna may help it, the metagame still is pretty stagnant towards noticing its potential to be effective, and it doesn't actually beat many Stealth Rockers reliably in the long haul more than one time, therefore making it much more niche and much less consistent. Nidoqueen, which should be Nidoking is what I wrote, but it should be Nidoqueen, also fell off. Nidoking is just stronger, therefore, Nidoking is just better. That simple. I mean, the metagame needs that extra strength in order to be broken through from that Nido and Nido slot, if you will, and Nidoqueen just doesn't provide it. The bulk is not worth the trade-off, so yeah. Celesteela, it was already kind of fallen off late last generation, but this generation has just been tragic for it. There's no room for Celesteela in any of the sets you don't see particularly often in the metagame, so yeah. Also falling off from C+ to C is Shuckle. I have no clue why it was C+ to begin with. It never really was. News to me, but yep, down we go. Next up, another Pokemon we see more in cheesy teams. While it doesn't set up sticky webs, it sets up screens. Grimmsnarl, it just isn't very good at anything besides checking Dragapol and abusing Prankster. It doesn't have a great match against many common Pokemon, and it oftentimes is going to die quickly, even when setting up screens, which can improve its bulk, therefore limiting it in the metagame. Another Dark type, Incineroar, just really was only good at checking ghost types and didn't have the longevity or the breaking power, making it a very mediocre option. Mimikyu is just a horrible Pokemon. This guy's behind an amazing ability, and that's not enough to salvage it. It can't do the trick offensively due to being pretty fragile and pretty weak, and that's a bad combination for a Pokemon trying to really be a breaker. Thundurus misses Hidden Power Ice and can't abuse Prankster very well. Weezing was cool in DLC 1, but isn't very effective anymore. Unfortunately, it doesn't really check and counter many things. The times definitely caught up with it, and that being Heatran, Grand types and future sites prominence. And finally, Crocodile, Necrozma, Nihilego, and Stakataka are all dropped to unranked, which is unfortunate, but none of them really have a particularly strong niche in the metagame right now. What do you think of these rises? Are they good? Are they bad? What would you change and why? Let me know down below in the comments. And I'm sorry, this video was sloppy, kind of rushed, and honestly, I am out of breath. I'm tired right now, so I'm gonna call this quits. But thank you so much for watching. Hope you all have a good day, and I promise a better production value moving forward. So yeah, be sure to check that out, and have a great day. Okay, bye guys, later.